Hello there and welcome. My name is Bins and here we are in a new shapes.io video, in which I'll be attempting to break my own record for building the fastest automated machine or make anything machine. This is my fourth attempt, my fourth machine, and today we'll be looking at how it works, and then, as I like to do, we'll run the 100 level test to see if this factory beats my version 3 machine in speed or not. For those that don't know, Shapes.io or Shapes.io is a building game, a factory-style building game where you extract both shapes and paints from infinite sources, and then you run conveyor belts from those sources into various processing units that are going to manipulate those shapes somehow. Split them, rotate them, merge pieces back together, paint them, etc. You do this in order to supply the central warehouse, called the hub, with the exact shape it requests. This game has 26 predetermined levels you'll have to beat, and then at level 27 you unlock the final buildings and virtual processing units, and you enter free play mode. This is why we're at level 27 right now. So a make anything machine is a single factory that is capable of producing virtually every shape, and usually, in a narrower sense for this game, a machine that's also capable of automatically detecting which shape the hub requests and then producing and outputting it completely independently without any manual intervention. People that have played this game before will know about so-called floating layers, which are contained in the rocket shape and also the logo shape. Now, this machine is not capable of handling those floating layers, as I'm not really sure whether it's even possible to create an MAM that is, to be honest. But then again, I know and can therefore tell you that randomly generated shapes in levels 27 and upwards will never contain any of those floating layers, so it's not something we need to worry about. On the other hand, this machine is capable of handling both gray quadrants and fully gray layers or shapes, as well as layers that have missing quadrants on them, provided of course that those missing quadrants don't result in floating layers. Now, before we take a look at the new version 4 machine, I'd also like to point out that its design builds heavily on earlier designs of mine, mainly the version 3 machine, so I won't always delve into the specifics of certain modules or concepts in this machine if they are exact or near exact replicas of modules used in earlier machines, or if they have the same logic behind them. So if you'd like more in-depth explanations about certain parts of this factory that I will be just quickly glossing over in this video, then I'd like to invite you to go watch my earlier videos, as you'll find those explanations there. There will be a link to the playlist at the end of this video. Alright, let's dive in. First things first, I am currently in this save game, I am currently at tier 36 in terms of my upgrades. Alright? So, let's have a look at the macro structure of this machine. This is what it looks like, and I have two machines again. They are identical to one another, so I will be able to output 40 items per second. And well, this save game won't be able to exceed that by much. Alright, so let's have a look at it. Here's the macro structure of this thing, and if you remember my version 3 video, I worked with a quad painter, and I did the same thing again, because the quad painter, I discovered, is actually, well, it's the fastest painter module available in this game, and for a long time I was hesitant to use it, because it is the only painter type that requires a wiring setup. But it turns out that if you just connect each lane with the proper quadrant of the shape, of the final shape, then the quad painter actually works wonders. It's the fastest painter out there, and I decided to use it again for this machine as well. Now, in my previous machine, my version 3 machine, I took an asymmetric approach. If you've seen the video, then you'll recall that I had a quad painter module in the middle for everything. And then I had my gray shapes coming in from the left, which produced layers, and then the layers got painted in the middle. I took the paints or the dyes, I took those from the right hand side, and then those got painted in the middle, and they got output to a final stacking machine, which would then stack the individual layers and output them to the hub. Now for this machine, I decided to essentially kind of use the same concept again, except I laid it out a bit differently, because one of the comments I got was, it doesn't really matter how nifty your machine is. It all comes down to distances. The further your distance, your shapes have to travel from A to Z, the slower your machine is going to be. And while I don't agree with that 100%, I do feel like I maybe didn't really take into account the compactness of my machine in a sufficient manner. So I tried to remedy that for this machine, and well, I think it worked. So the main difference is that in my version 3 machine, I created the gray layers first and then painted them in a central painting module. Right, so all the painting modules were close to each other. Here, this is not the case. Here I have a more, let's call it a parallel layout. You can also see this. So for example, this leftmost combo, this is one module that is simultaneously going to create and paint one full layer. So I have that 4 times in a row, and then those 4 painted layers are going to come together, and in this final module they are going to be stacked on top of each other. All right, so other than that, I still used elements from my version 2 and version 3 machine that I used before, and the simple reason for that is that they work really well. So in terms of the shapes, I used one omni shape, and well, an omni shape is a shape that has one of each quadrant, each potential quadrant on it, which means it has one circle quadrant, one square quadrant, one star quadrant, and one trapezoid quadrant, or the windmill or pinwheel shape. So, and like I did with previous machines, I run each line into a combination of 4 cutters, and each cutter is going to provide 1/4 of a belt's worth, and in turn those are going to add up to a full belt again. Behind the cutters I have this storage array, which I used in my previous machines as well, and in that sense I'm not going to explain how it works anymore. If you would like to know how it works, you can look at the videos for my version 2 and version 3 machines, because I use the exact same mechanism there as well. For the paints, I have a similar thing. I also reused this concept, which was first introduced to me by Zachary Smith in my version 2 machine. It's a smart color mixer, and it's going to mix the colors, and while the machine, the time it takes for this smart color mixer to start producing a full belt of the color we need, we're already going to be able to rely on these storages that already output a full belt of the color we need in the time it takes these machines to get up to speed. And as I explained in previous videos as well, this buffering system keeps itself, it replenishes itself somehow. Now, I did add another replenishing mechanism, to which we will get back later, all right? But the bottom line is that whenever we get a new signal, a new shape, it is simply connected, it is hooked up to this stacking machine. The paints are filtered automatically, and then they run into a double quad painter combination, which will then output a full belt of a painted layer. Now, what I will do is I will hook up the signal that the hub requests, and then we can look at the machine the way it runs in real time. Another difference with the previous machine is that I also made use of the same stacking module, and this is a stacking module. I won't say I invented it, but I did come up with it without any, inspiration from other videos or other designs I've seen. So if anyone else has made a similar design to this one, then this is coincidental, right? But what it does is it's basically a 4-in-1 stacker. Rather than creating one output from 2 inputs, it's going to create one output from 4 inputs. And the good thing about this stacking design is that it uses absolutely no wiring, right? It has no wiring whatsoever on it, and that's kind of why I like it. It's very efficient. It's pretty efficient. And as I said, it's a 4-in-1 stacker, so either it's going to take 4 quadrants and turn it into one layer, or it's going to take full layers and turn that into the final shape. And contrary to what I did before, I used this same machine twice, right? So it's now on the final stacker, the final stacking step, but it's also here. It's the exact same stacking module, right? Yeah, this one's not working now because our current shape only has 2 layers, which means that it will be the rightmost one that is used at the moment. Yeah, here we are. So, I talked about this machine in a video I've done about how to create a make anything machine or create a stacking module that has the possibility to handle missing quadrants, right? So I invite you to go watch that video, and that this is the exact same principle. Now this machine, this is very important. This machine can only work if you are handling full incoming belts. If for whichever reason, maybe you are still struggling, or you're still going through the predetermined levels and your tiers are not all on the same level or something, then this machine will probably fail, because it requires the ratios of all the machines to be on the same tier level, and it also requires the exact same input on all of your lines, all of your incoming lines. If that is not the case, then this machine will fail. It will not work accordingly. It will not work the way it's supposed to. And the only real unit of measurement that you have in this game is a full belt, which means that if you're not able to provide full belts for all of your incoming lines, then this machine is utterly useless. So it only works on that condition. Now, the way this works, in order to understand the way this is set up, it is important to realize how this machine works, and it is important to understand that there is a kind of hierarchy among the 4 incoming lines. And this hierarchy, in this upwards orientation, it works from right to left, right? It works from right to left, or in other words, there must be a priority for the top layer or the rightmost incoming line that is running through the stackers. If there is a backup on the leftmost lines and you have no input on the rightmost lines, then you will be creating a queue, and this machine will lose efficiency. So or it will not work at all, actually. And the way I try to handle that is with this little priority system. Now, again, I talked about this in the other video, so if you want more detailed explanation, then I invite you to watch that. But basically what it comes down to is these belt readers are going to detect whether we have shapes running across the belts. And if that is not the case, then these belt readers are going to output a 0 signal, and this is going to actuate, or better yet, more specifically, it's going to close the corresponding filter, and it's going to redirect, for example, this line, it's going to redirect that here, right? So if I, for example, if I shut off this line, you will see that the other lines are redirected. They move right one lane. Let's call it a lane, right? So, and if I re-enable this, then all of the lines will jump to their respective lanes again. Now, in order to not clog this machine, I must see that I empty this storage again. This was just for demonstration purposes, all right? So, but that's the way it works. This is pretty basic. This is pretty fundamental. It's pretty important, because if you don't do this, then this machine won't be able to handle missing quadrants on the layer, unless it is the leftmost lane, right? So this is pretty vital. It's pretty important, right? But once that's done, all of this moves up, and it moves to the painter, and then we have the paint coming in from the right, and they move to the final stacking module. Now, the interesting thing is that for this final stacking module, you don't need this lane priority management kind of thing that I did here. And the reason is very simple. You have to know how Shapes.io works. While you need to ensure that you're always using the rightmost lanes when you're stacking quadrants to a layer, you do not need this when you are stacking layers to a final shape. And the reason is because of the way the game works. If you don't need all 4 layers on your final shape, then automatically the rightmost 2 ones will be used. The top layer and the second to top layer, they will be used, and they will be coming in from the right. And this is going to be the case always. So you don't need a priority lane kind of redirection mechanism. And since we don't need it, I didn't put it in, because every additional mechanism you put in is a waste of resources, a waste of time, and it's going to make your machine less fast. Now, another thing I explained this in my previous video, is I made extensive use of the storage trick. I'm inclined to call it a hack, but I feel like the word hack implies some kind of cheating, and I feel like if this is a mechanism you can use, or you can use to your advantage within the game, without having to modify the code or whatever, then I don't see this as cheating, and therefore I don't like to call it a hack. But essentially what it is, for those who don't know, is that if you put a storage container on a line, then any incoming shape or a unit of paint or whatever, it's going to almost immediately skip the entire storage, and it's going to come out the other end almost immediately. And if you chain that up, I believe I prepared a little contraption here to show you what that is. Yeah, here it is. So if you chain that up, you're going to be able to almost teleport your shapes. You can see this at the bottom. You know, the shapes on the right, they are released at exactly the same time. But on the left, the bottom line is, you know, it is faster because of this mechanism. Now, as I explained in my previous video as well, there is a word of caution with this, because it kind of messes up, it messes with the frame rate a bit. And it might cause machines in other places of your map to become maybe a bit inefficient in terms of the frame rates and the exact ratios and whatnot. So you have to use this trick or this hack or whatever you want to call it with a bit of caution. However, I decided to use this. We don't need you anymore. There we go. So I decided to use this, and in my previous machine, I kind of put storages in wherever I had extra space. You know, I designed my machine and then I decided to put storages in the, you know, available locations where it wouldn't conflict with the wiring. Now what I did here was, before I designed my machine, I took this storage into account. So actually the machine takes up a bit more space so that I could lay out these storage lines more efficiently. So what I did here, for example, is you can see I made a little pyramid, and this is going to ensure that all of these paints, when they are released, they're going to be able to reach this point almost equally fast. You know, whether they come from the left or the right, they quickly traverse up this pyramid. Then they have to make a small bend, and then, you know, they can get to these painting units almost immediately. And I tried to take advantage of this system as much as I could. So as soon as these shapes come from the painter, let's look at one that's actually doing something, right? So they immediately move into this, let's call it a corridor, this tunnel, this booster tunnel of storages that are connected to one another. And that way they are able to make it to the final storage almost immediately, even though they come from, you know, they come from further away than this one, for example. All right, so what else is there? We're going to have a look at the wiring later, I guess. There is not much new going on. If you have looked at my previous machines, there is not much to say about the wiring. No, let's look at the wiring right away, right? There is not much to say about the wiring in terms of how these initial modules work, because I have already talked about this in my previous machine. You know, you just create 16 splits off your main incoming line. Let's see, where is my main incoming line? I have it coming from the right. There we go. So this is my main incoming line. You have 16 splits. This is, let's say, the usual. Each quadrant is analyzed. It's going to run through the filters. It's going to determine, is this the correct quadrant, blah, blah, blah. This is nothing new. Then it runs through this condensed filtering mechanism that is going to try and determine whether we have a full storage, and otherwise it's going to siphon off the excess, etc. This is also, this has been discussed in my previous videos as well. This is the setup for the smart color mixer right here. But there is another thing I wanted to talk about, and that is if we have either no shape on the quadrant or we have a gray shape on the quadrant, then I devised a little mechanism. You can see it right here, and it's a replenishment mechanism because contrary to the shape storages, the color storages, they will gradually deplete with this mechanism. So what I did is, in cases where that happens, I designed a little extra module right here, a little extra machine. And this extra machine it's going to create a belt that periodically runs all of the colors on one belt. And then it's going to simply run that upwards. And in case we don't require any color, either because this particular quadrant is not needed or it's a gray quadrant, then this filter is going to open up and it's going to, replenish these storages wherever it's needed. And this way I am able to let these machines run for quite some time without the storages running dry eventually. In my last machine I had that problem. In this one we won't, because sporadically we will get a gray shape, we will get a missing quadrant, and then these storages are just replenished. You can see this machine has been running for a while and almost all of my storages are completely full. Except for this one, which is currently at 4,800 units, but as soon as we get another color, then this yellow should be replenished as well. And the way I did that, so I have my incoming colors and my incoming dyes right here, and I have a little, let's call it a staircase of filters, and is going to detect if this particular quadrant is either gray or it is missing. Then it is going to provide a 0 signal on a triplet of filters, and this is going to siphon off. It's going to redirect a red, a green, and a blue line to the right into one of these machines. And as I said before, one of these machines is going to create a full belt. Well, not a full belt, but a belt that contains all of the colors in one, and they move up and they then gradually replace this. They fill up these storages again. Now, another thing I wanted to talk about is that I discovered that not all lines have to be treated equally. And now we're getting back to the priority thing I talked about. So I discovered that the fastest way to make this machine run is if I always have the rightmost lane running, because this is going to clean out this machine. It's going to clean out itself whenever we change our shape, whenever we move up a level and the signal changes. Then the fact that the rightmost lane will always be running, it's going to clean up cues that we might be getting on lanes 1, 2, and 3 coming from the right. So what I did in order to ensure this as much as possible is on all of my outputs that come from the painters, I added a filter, and the filter is going to reject any shape moving through that is not the final shape that we request. So it's going to block that, and if it's not the shape, then it's immediately going to trash that. Now again, let's have a look at, I believe this one's running already. Yeah. So you can't tell really well because I tried to condense everything as much as I could. But as soon as we get a change of shape, let's maybe wait until we move up a level. You will see that the shapes get blocked here. There we go. And we have no more output here, right? Only when we get the correct shape, we will be getting our output again. All right, there we go. and now we have a full belt right here, right? We're looking right here. So, and this is true for all of my lanes except the topmost layer, or in this case, the rightmost lane. So here, I did not provide such a filter, and this is going to keep this rightmost belt running, regardless of whether it produces the shape that we need, yes or no. And because this rightmost belt is always running, these shapes run through the entire stacking module. And if we still have a queue in any of these machines, on any of these lines, then the fact that the rightmost belt always keeps running at full speed, it is going to clear out these queues automatically. Because while the rightmost belt runs, the other ones won't. They will be shut off because it will take some time to start producing the correct shape. And in that time, this machine clears itself. And I have discovered that it works really well. As you can tell, during my explanation so far, we have already moved to level 62, 63 at the moment. So I believe this is it. This is my machine. I believe I've explained everything pretty much there is to explain about this machine. And what I would like to do now, as usual, as you may be expecting if you've seen my previous videos, is I would like to run the 100 test. I'm going to restart my game because it's not on autosave. If I restart the game, I'll be back at level 27 in this save game, and I'm going to decrease all of the performance settings in order to maximize my frames per second, my frame rate as much as possible. And then we're going to run the 100 tests and time how long it takes to go from levels 27 to 127. See you in a bit. So then, here we are. Frame rate is looking good, not perfect. It's hovering around, seems to be hovering around 50 frames per second. Sometimes it bumps up to the full 60. But yeah, this is what we're gonna have to work with. Now, as usual, I'm going to start the timer. I'm going to get rid of the constant signal that I had, and as soon as the timer hits 1 minute, I'm going to connect the missing piece to the hub, and then at the end we're gonna deduct the initial minute again, and we'll get a pretty accurate result. Here we go. And that is that. We clocked in at 53 minutes and 1 second, which I believe, since we dipped under the hour, is going to be a win either way. Now remember, we can still deduct the initial minute we counted, so that makes a total of 52 minutes and 1 second, and we're going to multiply that by, divide that by 100, and the result is 31 seconds and 21 cents, which will round up to 32 seconds. So that is a definite win. All right then. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching this video. I hope you enjoyed looking at this machine, look at how it works, and maybe I've inspired you to start working on your own stuff. I always invite you to try to beat this record. And we'll see if I come up with something more creative in the future to try and do better than this machine. Thank you so much for watching. Have a lovely day. Bye bye.